Pick that song, the last one we sang, but it fits perfectly with what we're here today about, is that this is not our world. This is not our home. Our home is in eternity. Make sure you have a Bible today. We're going to be reviewing a lot of verses, or not a lot, but the ones that I've been, you might say, guided to pick out as I did my study on this, and I've asked young men in the congregation to read the majority of those, so we look forward to that. So we're going to spend time together, and what we're going to talk about is the Beatitudes today. I've got the first one. And the interesting thing about being the first one is that does it lead off to all the other ones? And I think when you look at the first Beatitude that says, poor in spirit, if our spirit isn't right, then everything that's after that isn't really going to matter. Because we have to be grounded in the spirit to be able to do the Beatitudes. For those of you that are new to the Bible and are here to learn in that, Beatitudes is found in the book of Matthew, which is the first book of the New Testament. We're going to be talking in chapter 5. Webster's defines Beatitudes as a blessedness. That's the Latin phrase for it. It's a state of happiness or well-being, sort of that feeling you have when you wake up on Christmas morning and you go downstairs. It's a happy feeling. It's that day you landed your first job that you've been trying to get as a young adult. It's a great thing. It's that first girlfriend that notices you. Is a great thing. It's also a promise which is sometimes represented as having immediate realization, but in most cases is a future outlook. And as we read through the Beatitudes today with the speakers, as it says, example of verse 3 says, blessed are the poor in spirit. There's a comma, which we want to be blessed in the poor in spirit, but if we do that, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So when the Beatitudes talks about something that's out farther, what they're talking about is if you do this, you will get this. So we see that in verse 3. Let's go ahead and start in verse 1 and 2 and listen to the words. Follow with me. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. He opened his mouth and began to teach them, saying, I want you to do something for me this morning. Take 3 deep breaths and let them go. Everybody go in, out, in, out, in, out. Now what I'd like you to do is everybody close your eyes. You can look down, you can look straight ahead, whatever you want to do. You're there that day. You're in the crowd. You're walking up the hill. Something is going on. Lots of people are going to hear some guy talk. You're standing there, you're walking with them. You got your buddy next door. You got your next door neighbor. You see friends from your neighborhood. But you see a lot of people you don't know. And you're walking up. The crowd is huge. You've never seen this size crowd before. Do you see them? Do you see their faces? Are they dressed like you? Do they look like you? Do they act like you? Do they talk funny? You hear them chattering and talking? Big thing going on. You look farther ahead as to why are we going up here? What are we doing? We heard about this guy that just seems to be amazing. You see him up there. What do you see? You see a man. You see a man standing there climbing the mountain. Behind him are some men following him. You get to the crowd, you're standing there, you're waiting to see what's going on. Jesus sits down. Do you see it? We don't know if the crowd sat down. We don't know if the crowd just stood there. Let's just say you're standing there watching. Now shift and be Jesus. You're walking with your disciples and people, and you're walking up and you're going up this mountain, and you see this crowd behind you that's following you, that has become the custom. They want to know what this is all about. Jesus gets up there, he's standing there, he turns around, he sees this crowd, huge crowd, and what is he thinking to himself? This is going to be a great day. I get to send a message to all these individuals. He sees through your eyes, looking through Jesus' eyes, he sees all these people that are looking at him. They're here to hear something. They think something's going to change in their life today. They're taking a gamble to spend time on this guy. Then Jesus sits down. Go ahead and open your eyes. Keep that vision throughout our lesson today. Not only what you're seeing looking at Jesus talking, But think about what Jesus is seeing when he's looking out. There's no noise. People aren't talking. People aren't wrestling. They're waiting to see. There's anticipation in the air. What is he going to do today? You see that setting in your mind's eyes. Jesus picked this spot and he sat down. Why would he sit down? Don't most of us, when we teach or talk, we stand up? We don't go to the pulpit on Sunday morning and Nathan sits in a chair and preaches. Why did he sit down? Are you more comfortable listening and talking to somebody that's sitting down? When you go to a friend's house and you're talking, when he goes to talk, does he stand up? When you're at church camp, you're in classes, is the preacher standing up, the teacher standing up? A lot of times they pulled a chair up in a round circle and you're all talking. I believe that's the environment Jesus wanted to make, is that I'm a man as you are man. I'm here to talk to you and teach you today. Who came to sit with him? His disciples. Here's the crowds. Everybody are there. He says he's going to teach. What does teaching imply? That you should have some good grasp of what you're talking about? That you are talking with authority? That people want to listen to you, so you want to tell them what they want to hear or what they need to hear? In Jesus' case, he's getting ready to do the Sermon on the Mount and tell people what they need to hear. They want to know what this is all about. He's going to lay it out for them. He was the one with authority that day. He's different than the scribes and the Pharisees and that group that they know everything. Just ask them, they'll tell you. But Jesus is the one. He opened his mouth and began to teach them. We must realize that the words he is getting ready to speak are the words from his Father, words from God. There is no higher authority than our God. Should we believe what God says? This is a man. How do we know he belongs to God? Well, thing is, that's the world thinking. You'll read scriptures and people will say, well, that was back then. That doesn't apply today. Things have changed. We don't worry about that anymore. What was the law then? With the New Testament, the New Covenant, the law instilled there, it is good then, good today, good tomorrow. When they say it doesn't matter because it's different, that's the world talking. It says, blessed are what? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And what happens if we're poor in spirit? We have the opportunity of the kingdom of heaven. Let's talk about your lives for a minute. This is a youth rally, you might call it. You guys are young, you're new at the game, you're here, you're ready to go. Things are new all the time. You're learning new things, you're experiencing new things, you're experimenting with new things. You have feelings, you have emotions, you have challenges, you have moods. One day you're good, one day you're bad. Your parents say, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. We have good days, we have bad days, just like everybody else. You're looking forward to what's coming next. You got a whole life, we call it a runway. You got a whole runway ahead of you for your life. What you're gonna do, where you're gonna live, who you're gonna marry, if you have your 3.5 kids, whatever it may be, but that's ahead of you. You know today what you want to become. 99% of you will change that. And you'll change it again, you'll change it again. You'll go to college, gonna get a master's or a bachelor's degree in business, and you come out in basket weaving. You will change that, but that's great. You will do things you've never even thought of. You'll have experiences that you have no idea how great they are until you do them. You take me, 64 years. I know I look young and all that, but 64 years of life. Most good, some not so good. But the ones that aren't good is usually because something I decided to do that I knew at the time I shouldn't do. Amen? I made mistakes, learned lessons from them, sometimes. Sometimes I told myself, boy, I am never going to do that again. I did it again. But you repeat it. The problem when you get my age is I spend more time thinking about all the things I shouldn't have done, all the things I could have done, and realize that I made mistakes. But mostly I realize time has flown by. And I remember my mother telling me, it goes like this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm 15, 16, it's like takes forever. Summer at your age is a long time, or is a very short time, long time. But as an adult, it's like, you're going back already? Really? You just got out of school. But think about this as we start our lesson. And keep with me here. This is important for us to understand about poor in spirit. We're going to get into what that truly means. Today, right now, think about this. You are closer to Judgment Day than you were yesterday. Is that right? Okay. Can I go back and redo yesterday? Why not? It's gone. This isn't the DVR thing where you can go, what did he say? And you rewind it and do it and you see it again. Well, just now we're still closer than we were 10 seconds ago. Tomorrow we'll be closer. So do we worry about what happened in the past? The things we did, I mentioned where I spend time thinking about, oh, I shouldn't have done that, should have done this. Can I change my past? No. Who can take care of my past? Jesus. Put that in the corner of your mind. Can I change the present? A little bit, right? Because when I'm sitting here talking about changing the present, I've already missed it. Okay? Because if I tell myself, okay, right now I'm going to do this, well, I didn't do it because it's already passed. But I can change the future. And that's what the Beatitudes are about, is changing the future of our lives, changing it from what I call an attitude that we have to the Beatitudes. You have this attitude, let's be this attitude. So as we study today and you study in your life and we go back to our churches tomorrow, think about what's being said and say, can I apply that to my life? And if I can, then when can I start applying? How often do you say, well, I'll get around to it. I'll take care of that next week or next week or next week or next week. With the Beatitudes and the stuff we're studying, we have to make the change now because it says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. When do we get to that level of being poor in spirit? There are worldly goals. I want to have a nice car. I want to have a nice house. I want to have a beautiful wife, a beautiful husband. I want kids to behave. I want to have jet skis. I want to have boats. I want to have all that. That's great. I mean, you guys are over here going, yeah, I like this. Those are worldly things. Nothing really wrong with them as long as you're not worshiping them. But if we're going to focus our energy, let's focus on things beyond. Let's focus on things of heaven. We can have a rewarding life, but not tied to money. Not living our life because of money and personal gain. If we have all those things, will that get us to heaven? No. We have to have the right spirit, the right mind, the right mindset, live a life that pursues godly things, not worldly things. If you are pursuing worldly things and you don't have any money, are you poor in spirit? That isn't what it's talking about. What it's talking about is what is in your spirit. Where does it stand? Worldly things, your spirit is not poor, it's broken, and it's in trouble. If you listen to what Jesus says on the mountain that day and work towards the goal of being in the kingdom of heaven, as he mentioned, your life can still be rewarding. Rich in ways, again, not tied to money. Making you confident in your path, making you confident in making solid decisions based on how they lead you through God's will. Listening to your inner voice. How many in here have an inner voice? Okay, if you didn't raise your hand, you need to turn it on. Because at 64 years old, you'll realize that a lot of those mistakes that I think about, my inner voice said, let's not do that today. But you go, it's okay. I'm not going to cross the line. I'll be okay. Listen to that inner voice. That's why God put it there. If we want to be poor in spirit, we have to think about it. You must follow the teachings. You cannot have the attitude, I don't need anyone to help me. I can do it by myself. I don't need anything because I'm under control, because I can do it by myself. I'm a self-made person. I did it on my own. I don't need any help. Jesus is telling us that we need to understand that we need help. I cannot do it by myself. I am out of control. I cannot get back in control. I need help. I've done nothing with my life, nothing to show anything good. I cannot do it on my own. Now think a minute. Jesus is on the mount talking. Is he talking to the first group? Those out there that go, I don't need him. I don't know what he's doing. I don't care. Or is he talking to the second group that says, yes, this is what I need to hear. Which group's he talking to? He's talking to both of them. Because he wants to help those that need help because they know they're in trouble. But he's also sending a very clear message to the ones that say, I don't need Jesus. I can do this all by myself. He's talking to both of them. Based on stories we read in the Bible, we see both attitudes, as I mentioned earlier. We see the Pharisees and the scribes that I don't need to talk to Jesus. I don't need him. Then we see the lame and those that are out there. Jesus is reaching down and pulling them up. He sees that, and people see that also. Think about what Jesus sees when he looks at the crowd. He knows in the crowd, you're number one, you're two, you're one, you're two, you're one. These guys are all two. He knows. You know why he knows? Because he knows what's going on in here, and he knows what's in your heart. He sees all kinds of people. He sees all kinds of personalities. And his lesson, again, is for everyone there. Everyone is impacted, saying, we can have the whole world, but without Jesus, we have nothing. And here's a phrase I'd like you to think about. We can spend our lifetime chasing the goal of life here on earth, all the things that we can get from, all about me, and regret it for eternity. Or we can plan our lives, one with Jesus at the center of our universe. And by doing that, we'll be at the center of his universe in eternity. You can have the riches and the rewards now for a few short 80 years, or you can have eternity living the life. I really struggle with the concept of eternity, especially if one thinks they might go to hell. Because the pain you receive in hell never ends. Here on earth, we get pain, we get some pills, we get some ointment, we go whatever, we're feeling better. Every day forever. And when does forever end? It doesn't. That alone should scare us, the craziness out of us. I'm going to have some young men read for us today. Lucas, if you'll read Matthew 5, if everybody will turn there, Matthew 5, verse 48.
Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
Okay, one more time.
Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
What is Jesus saying? We have to be perfect, right? That's what he says. Verse 40, it says, therefore you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Who in here in their life so far has been perfect? Why not? So does that mean you're not going to heaven because you haven't been perfect? How do we get around that phrase where Jesus says we need to be perfect? Who is looking at us to determine if we're perfect? God. Who's between God and us? Jesus. Is Jesus going to make it right from the point of what God sees, that we're perfect in God's sight? That's what he went to the cross for. So don't get hung up that, well, I can't be perfect. I can't even be close to it. Being perfect is by obtaining Jesus at the center of your life, following his teachings, and looking how Jesus felt at the Pharisees to point it out. If we can have Joshua read Luke 16, verse 15. Luke 16, verse 15. Okay, are you those who justify yourself in the sight of men, but God knows your hearts, for that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God? How often do we do things in our life to justify the sight of men? Do we try to blend in and be buddies in this group because that's how they act, so I need to do that? They wear their pants funny, they wear funny clothes, so Mom, I need to go out and get these pants and these funny clothes because, all my guys are wearing it, I need to wear it. That's just growing up. But if you're at work, this is the older adults will know this, if you're at work and all of a sudden you're standing around the water cooler and they're telling jokes that they shouldn't be telling, they're using language they shouldn't be using, and you're standing there just going, heh. Are you justifying man? You're doing what they're doing. That's what he's talking about. God sees us for who we are, not the fake face we put on. There's phrases about looking in the mirror. What man do you see? I see a guy shaving his face and falling asleep. But think about it. Do that in the next week or so. When you're done combing your hair and doing all that, stand in the mirror and actually look at yourself. Who are you? What do people see you as? Do they see you as a Christian? Do they see you as a person that whatever the temperature of is in that situation, that person? We hear the words about two-faced. We hear the words about turncoat. We hear words that just imply that we're something other than we actually are. We can fix that. We talked about doing the changes in the future. We can fix that. The good thing is God looks at our hearts. He is looking for humility toward him, being humble in the front of God. He's looking, do we fear him? Not in a bad way, but do we understand when we say fear him, that he understands he has consequences and actions for what we do. I have a lot of employees at a company I work for, and they'll say, hey, can I do this? I said, you can do anything you want, but you can't pick the consequences. And I also tell them you do anything you want at least once, but you may not have to worry about ever doing it again. He also wants us to be obedient in his ways. If it was simply taking Jesus on, saying, I'm born, I believe who you are, I believe God, I believe everything that you're telling me, I'm baptized, I'm now a Christian, and you go, well, I got that checked off. You have a new life you have to live. And those of you that aren't baptized at this point, think about that when that time comes up when you say, I want to be a follower of God, I want to be a Christian. Realize there's a change that has to take place. We will never be perfect on earth. We know that. There's no way to do it. We're not built that way. But we can be perfect in his sight. And that's through the Son, Jesus, who's our mediator. And that's that word is who's between God and who's between us. And that's Jesus. Let's have Noah read 1 Timothy chapter 2. If you'll turn there, 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 5 and 6.
For there is one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself a ransom for all to be justified in these matters.
What did we hear? For there is what? One God. We can't worship God and worship the world at the same time. There's one God. There's one what? One mediator. It isn't some man-made person. There's God, there's Jesus. And between God and us is the mediator, the man, Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all, the testimony given at the proper time. He became our mediator when he allowed himself to be put on that cross, brutally, savagely beaten, and he died for us. We weren't even born then, but he knew us at that point. That's something to think about. Jesus knows, and God knows all this stuff. 3 days later, he was risen up. He beat death, and he opened that door for us as a pathway to heaven. But it's through him and him only that we make it to heaven. Again, how are we going to look perfect to God? We follow Jesus, he'll do the rest. Where's the mediator sit? What authority does he have? He sits at the right hand of God. He is right there. We don't know the conversation God and Jesus have. We can always think things, and there's things that I think is God's sitting there, Jesus is sitting there, and God leans over him and goes, you need to fix that guy. I'm getting a little torqued with the way Bill's acting. Jesus goes, I got it. He's going to be okay. So we say a prayer that night saying, God, please forgive me for what I'm doing. I'm in a horrible situation. I'm calling on you to help me, get me out of this. In Jesus' name we say. Why do we say in Jesus' name we say? Because we're talking to God through our mediator, Jesus. So when we're babbling and we're crying and we're hysterical because our life's falling apart, we're not really saying what we're trying to say. Jesus hears all of that. He goes, gotcha. He goes to God and said, this is his issues. Boom, 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 boom. You may not have made sense, but Jesus heard you, and as a mediator, he communicated it to God the way it needed to be said. We ask for forgiveness, sin's gone, as long as we change the ways that we're doing. Think about the other thing. Jesus will stand with us on Judgment Day, which is a good thing. in most cases. I kid a little bit. One of the elders here, he always says in his elder prayer, says, Lord and Father, thank you, and on Judgment Day, please find us blameless and well done, good and faithful servant. I mean, that's a great phrase. What scares me is I'm going to be standing there or on my ground, prostrate with God, and Jesus is going to be there, and God's going to go, well done. If you can have a heart attack in heaven, that's when you'd have a heart attack. That's when he says, well. Let's go back to Matthew 5. I want everybody to read this out together. Verse 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Let's all say that out loud. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What do we have to do to be poor in spirit? First and foremost, we have to humble ourselves in the sight of God. We have to let him know he is in control of our lives. We are here to worship him day in and day out. We need to be a servant to others. I don't know how many of you have gone and helped somebody do something. Somebody help a lady cross the street, help some lady out, loaded her car with groceries. How do you feel when you walk away? You feel good. I told this story the other day that I was at Home Depot and I was getting some stuff and I saw this elderly man older than me pushing a big cart of rock to his truck. And I thought, boy, that guy's going to need help. So I pulled up beside him, I got out, I put my gloves on, I go, hey, I'll help you load this. He goes, oh man, that'd be great. So we loaded it all up in his truck, and he goes, man, I really appreciate that. I go, what's your name? And I go, Bill. And he goes, well, I'm going to tell my wife about you. And I go, no, just tell her you did it all. He goes, oh no, I'm going to say you did it, not me. Thank you so much. I felt good, he felt good, everything was good. I tell my wife that, and she goes, well, why didn't you volunteer to go home with him and help him unload it? And I said, in California? He would have jumped in the truck and drove away, which is very sad. Because 30, 40 years ago, you would have gone home and helped him unload it, and his wife would have made you a sandwich for lunch. That's that good heart, that good servant. Ask for help from other people, especially in your spiritual walk, but also help others in need. I'm going to challenge everybody on this one. You're driving down the road, you're leaving Costco, you pull up to the turn signal, there's a guy there with the sign. And you're changing the radio dial, you're looking out the window, come on, change, and then you drive off. We do that, right? Why? Well, one, we've been told he's not really poor, he's just scamming people. But is that our decision to make? What I've done is I go to the bank, when I get paid, I get $4 or $5 bills, and I put it in my little thingy there. Not a lot of money, but I hand that guy $5. Does he need it? Probably. If he doesn't, hey, what's $5? But what's Jesus thinking? Hey, good job. A lot of those people need help. Give them some help. Give them what you can. Maybe it's $1. Maybe it's 50 cents. But don't do this. What's that phrase we hear? They walk among us. What if that's an angel? And he goes, nope, he didn't do it. Nope, he didn't do it. Nope, he didn't do it. Hey, here's this guy, $5. Thank you. Something to think about. We have to understand that you cannot do it on your own. You need Jesus. He's our mediator. We're going to mess up and probably mess up multiple times a day. You need fellow Christians. You need the guy sitting next to you or the gal sitting next to you. Don't expect to do it on ourselves. This world teaches that I'm my own man. I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it, and if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. I will decide where I go, not somebody else. That's a bad thought to get into. Challenge and strengthen your faith daily. Where do you stand with God? Where is your spirit? Are you humble? Are you doing all the things that you need to do? If Philip will read Hebrews chapter 9. We're going to read verse 14 and 15.
How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse
All right, thank you, good job. Again, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? For this reason, again, he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that since the death has taken place for the redemption of the transgressions that were committed under the first covenant, those who have been called may receive the promise for eternal inheritance. Okay, we talked about earlier, we're closer to heaven or another place than we were a minute ago. We need to start today fixing our lives. Some of you may just be a little bit. Some of you are going, yeah, but it's so tough. Yeah, when you dig a hole, it's hard to get out of it. But the first thing you learn when you find you're digging a hole is quit digging. Quit digging. Find a way out. Make the decision of who you want to serve. We hear that all the time. For me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Why does it say for me and my house and not just me will serve the Lord? How more confident can you be? How much better can you do if your family life, for the kids, that your parents are strong Christians and they got looking out for you? Or parents, we got to help the kids. Either way, but it says, for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Put into action what you're wanting to accomplish. Business 101 is, if you have a goal, you have to measure it. If you don't measure it, you don't know where you're at. If I'm going to read more, I'm going to try to be better. Measure how you go through. Take others with you. Help your family, help your friends. That guy that you run with, that gal you run with that obviously doesn't understand Christianity or doesn't understand Jesus, just say, hey, I see you're having a bad day. You want to know why I'm having a good day? Because I got this guy named Jesus in my life. Push through the tough times. When you hit that wall, don't give up. Get around that wall. What are we taught? Don't be anxious for anything, everything in supplication and prayer to God. Put it on them. He loves for you to call and say, can you take care of this for me? But you got to get out of his way. A couple of final thoughts to think about this week. A couple phrases. Christ who was and is to come. He was there, he's here now, he's coming back. I handed out some notebooks to the younger children, make notes, scritch cats. It says, be yourself, everyone else is taken. Okay? I don't need to be like Nathan. I don't need to follow Phil. I don't need to do what Charles, the life he lives. I have my own life. God made me in what? We hear in Genesis, his own image. So when I want to be like Phil or I want to be like Nathan or I want to be like Charles, am I telling God, hey, God, I don't like the person you made me? There wasn't anything wrong with you when you were born. It's the choices and the decisions that you're making. Your inner peace is going to drive your walk through life. Beware where you are, what you're doing, and what you plan to be. If you put Jesus at the center of your heart protecting you, he will be there for you, day in and day out. Say this with me after I say it once. It's up to me. Okay? All together. It's up to me. Nathan can't do it for me. Phil can't do it for me. Just doesn't work that way. Okay, Joshua, I'd like you to read Matthew 7, the other Joshua. Matthew 7, verse 28 and 29.
And when Jesus finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one who had authority and not as the scribes.
When Jesus had finished, and he talked a lot. I knew kids in church camp that memorized the Sermon on the Mount and would recite it. Quite amazing. When Jesus had finished these words, the crowds were what? Amazed. That implies they were listening. Amazed at what? What he said? It says amazed at his teaching. For he was teaching them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Jesus was Jesus. Jesus wasn't trying to be like somebody else. Only you can make yourself better. Only you can commit to following Jesus. Only you can make it happen. Let's be poor in spirit. Let's humble ourselves. Let's get to that nature. And then let God and Jesus fill us. Thank you.